Single parenthood is more and more common. I'm Scott Conway with Mothers Raising Sons, and we're talking today about single mother and how we can support single mothers in what is sometimes their biggest challenge. And sometimes even the single mother herself doesn't realize how big this challenge is that she's facing. If she's so busy just taking care of business, getting things done on a day-to-day basis, that some of these things may not occur to her until sometimes her children are grown and she's reflecting back on it. Sometimes even when it's not single parenthood, it's like that. My own mother, as a grandmother, watching her grandchildren growing up, has reflected several times in conversations with me that there are things that now as a grandmother, looking back over how things have rippled forward into her boy's adult life, that she kind of wishes she would have done differently, that she wishes she had prioritized differently, that when we were kids, in particular when I was a kid, there were a lot of things she really just didn't think was that important. But then as I grew up, as I was an adult, as she's watching these and rippling down into the next generation, things that now looking back, she wishes she had prioritized differently. So whether you're a single mother or whether you're a not single mother, whether you're even a father or a grandparent of any sort, when you're participating in the lives of children, very often as you get later in the children's lives, you reflect on things you really wish you had known when they were younger. There's the classic human thing of, if I knew then what I know now, I would do things differently. So what is the situation that we're facing? Well, of course, single parenthood is more and more common. The U.S. Census Bureau reports 2012, which is the latest year that we have complete data for, that there were 12.2 million single-parent households. About 80% of those, 10.3 million households, are run by a single mother. Now, if you think about this for a moment, 10.3 million women running households without the help of the father, without the help of a husband, and taking care of kids. No matter anyone's opinion of it, it is a growing reality. Some people say, oh, that's a tragedy, we can't have this, we can't have fathers raising kids without a mother, we can't have mothers raising kids without a father, this is terrible. And there's a lot of people that will spend a lot of their time talking about the broader social dynamics, but what it boils down to, though, is it's a reality. This is what is happening. Regardless of someone's opinion of it, it is the reality, and we have to deal with the reality as it exists and with the concrete problems. We can't just decide, well, we don't like this reality, we're just going to have this not be real. And we're just going to talk about how terrible it is. And if you talk to the average single parent, if they had a choice between being a single parent and having the other parent there, having never been widowed, having never been divorced, having been married when they had their kid, having the Brady Bunch, Leave It to Beaver kind of happy relationship, happy marriage, happy partnership, they would have been thrilled with that option had that been the alternative. But very often that is not the alternative. Very often the alternative can sometimes even be unspeakable. Now when we look at this whole equation, 10.3 million single mothers raising children. Over 6.5 million single mothers are raising at least one son. So of that 10.3 million, half of single mothers have one child. So 1/2 of all single mothers are raising one child. And of course, that'd be roughly 50% of them will be boys and 50% of them will be girls. 30% of single mothers have 2 children. Now, if you think about this for a minute, if 30% of single mothers have 2 children, well, what are the odds there? Well, chances are you have 1 boy and 1 girl. If you have one, because you have 4 possible combinations. You can have 2 boys, you can have 2 girls, you can have 1 boy and 1 girl. Or you get a boy and then girl, or girl and then boy. So 50-50, if someone's raising 2 children, 50-50 is a boy and a girl. 1 out of 4 of them will have 2 boys, 1 out of 4 of them will have 2 girls. So of that 30% with 2, 75% of them, 3 out of 4 of that 30% will have at least 1 son. A quarter of them will have 2 sons. 20% of single mothers are raising 3 or more children. 3 or more. Now if we just take 3, Look at the possible combinations. There could be 3 boys, there could be 3 girls. There could be 2 boys and a girl, or 2 girls and a boy. And when you put all of these numbers together, you realize over 6.5 million single mothers are raising at least 1 son. And there's additional dynamics that become an issue with this for the woman, for the mother. Because when you're raising a son in particular, when you're raising a daughter, the daughter can look at you and see, okay, how do I be a responsible grown-up woman? How do I be womanly? How do I be feminine? How do I be responsible? How do I do the grown-up female thing we call woman? Well, if you're the mom, you're around for that. That she can look at you and say, okay, I watch you, I have a starting place. But if you have a mother who's raising a son, he can't look at the mom to see, what does this grown-up male look like? How do I do man? And he's going to look at his mom and say, okay, I can see a whole bunch of grown-up with mom, but how do I distinguish between, okay, what is grown-up male versus grown-up female? Is there a difference? Well, assuming that you're not engaging in homosexual relationships, they say, okay, there seems to be this pairing going on. Males pair with females, there's some dynamic there, so there must be a difference, and this difference must in some way be important, and they begin to see that boys tend to do one set of things, girls tend to do a different set of things. Boys tend to gravitate toward one type of activities, girls tend to gravitate toward other types of activities. They can begin to see there's a difference. Pretty obviously there's a biological difference. Once puberty hits, that biological difference gets underscored pretty strongly. And what the sexes tend to be after from time to time varies from males to females. And they begin to notice these things, and so as they start wanting to have a role model of, well, what is this? What does this look like? How do I get what I want? What does this man thing look like? Well, she can't be that example because she's not a man. And there'll be a natural tendency then for the boy to be looking around somewhere in his experience for an example. What does this look like? And beginning to absorb definitions of masculinity, definitions of manhood to lodge in his heart. Now think about the problem a lot of these single mothers have. Missing men or poor male role models. Missing men or poor male role models. Because 45% of single mothers have never married. That they were not married to the father of the baby when they got pregnant. They were not married to the father of the baby when she had the baby. She was a single mother in the truest sense of the word. Unmarried, never married, totally single. Now think about what this must mean. The commitment between the mother and the father involves sex. I commit to sex. Here we go. So that's about as far as it necessarily went. We can presume that most of these women who never married the father of their children did so for one of 2 reasons. Either he didn't want to marry her, or she didn't want to marry him. Possibly both of them at the same time. So we can presume that most of these women have experienced at least a lack of commitment up to complete abandonment by the father of their babies. Now, some of this is a little bit of a misnomer because all we know is the marital status in the statistic. It's possible a significant number of these women, and I don't have those numbers, were cohabitating with the father of their children. I attended a wedding one time that this couple decided to get married when they were having their 5th child together. And as child number 5 was on the way, here she is, 8.5 months pregnant, walking down the aisle, and the other 4 children were part of the wedding. So you have very often this lack of commitment where I commit to living with you, I'll be here with you, but I'm not going to marry you. I'm not going to make it official. I'm not going to get that piece of paper that says, yes, I am yours, you are mine, because that involves a whole bunch of legal rights and a whole bunch of legal responsibilities. And when you have both the combination of the rights and the responsibilities, that changes the dynamic of the relationship, and a lot of people are hesitant to step across that line. And so if you have a child growing up, especially in those early years, with the example being set is a lack of commitment, that they realize men don't commit to women. Women don't commit to men. that this commitment to the relationship, the establishing the formality of the relationship, just isn't part of what men do, and begins to absorb that. Now, sometimes it's the woman herself who made the decision that the father of the baby was not a man she wanted in the life of her baby full time. So sometimes it's the woman, even if the man were to propose, she said, oh, hell no. Like, I might have been interested in the kind of relationship we had, but I don't want my child to turn into you. Sometimes you have the mother who says, I don't even want my child to turn into me. I definitely don't want my child to turn into you. And she doesn't want to be a part of bringing a child into the world in partnership with someone she doesn't want her child to be like. And she may not even have thought about this until she got pregnant. But now that she is pregnant, now that she is making that decision, this is something that is now becoming more important to her. That on one thing she might have been craving whatever level of relationship that they had, but when she looks at it in a different context of, do I want this baby to grow up to follow this man? That sometimes changes her answer. So 45% of single mothers are never married. That, of course, leaves the other 55%. 55% of single mothers are divorced, separated, or widowed. Now, fortunately, a fairly small percentage of them are widowed. Unfortunately, the statistic didn't break out the exact numbers. The vast majority of single mothers in this category are either divorced or separated. Now, by separated, that means that they're legally separated. They might even still be dwelling in the same house, but they're legally separated. That's a tiny minority. More often, that they have left their spouse, but they haven't formalized the legal divorce. They're still legally married, but they're no longer living together. So for all intents and purposes, they're divorced. Just legally, they're not divorced. Now, divorced and separated women, of course, have experienced significant pain from men. The pain that they experience is either sufficient that either she filed for divorce or her husband left her, one or the other. So whatever it is in the dynamics of their relationship, that they are no longer together. And generally speaking, when you have a good quality woman, and most mothers who are raising their children, devoting them, you have a level of quality here manifest in this obvious responsibility that is being met, that tells you that you've got something going on here, and that for whatever reason, either the man walked out on that responsibility, or in that devotion to her children, she did not want her children around that man. And the relationship deteriorated to the point where I cannot be who I need to be and be parenting the way I need to parent in relationship with someone doing stuff like that. That whatever it was, whatever the reasons behind it were, the experience with her husband was bad enough that either he left her, which would then be part of the bad experience, or she thought it was bad enough to want her leaving him. The majority of women, or the majority of divorces, are initiated by women. Now, sometimes she'll initiate the formality of the divorce because he left. And he just left. He didn't initiate the divorce, he just left. And a lot of those women will do the same thing. So she may have filed for divorce, and either way, these women have a negative experience with men. And when you have these kind of negative experiences, that makes a difference in your perspective of men. Personal experience affects parenting. So imagine, me as a man, what if I have negative opinions of women? What if I am very sexist? What if I have these perspectives of females that, take any of the negative stereotypes? And then I'm going to raise a daughter. And my view of women are, ... Whatever I think women are, that sets my autopilot for what I'm going to raise my daughter to be. Maybe not on purpose, but because I have these perspectives, and maybe some intensely held perspectives, informed by my own annoyance, informed by my own pain, my personal experience, that could bleed over and would have a tendency to either be duplicated in my daughter or to be catapulted in the opposite direction, which is very often a whole different set of problems in my daughter. So personal experience affects parenting. What happens when women have negative experiences with men? Well, very rationally, when you have negative experiences with a class of people, there's a tendency to form negative opinions over the class of people with whom you have the negative experience. You do enough damage to women by men, and guess what? She'll have a negative perception of men. They tend to develop negative ideas about men based on their personal experience. Now, they may still talk idealistically about finding a good man. The concept, though, is that men, just plain old men, aren't good. That they're innately not good. And that a good man is like some kind of unusual thing. A good man then is treated like a rare treasure. Like you wouldn't expect to see this. And without intending to, the boy realized, okay, there's this category of man, and that's what most men are, and that becomes an autopilot for being manly. And then there's this category called a good man, which is apparently something different, and sometimes it's treated almost as though it is opposite being a man. And sometimes the things we talk about as a good man, in contrast to regular man, what we end up doing is we define the man as the jerk, and the good man, he's the nice guy. He's the good boy. And then we set him up for like all the friend zone stuff. We set him up to not be able to do the part of manly man that a man needs to be able to step up and do. The kind of manly man things that at one time was in the purview purely of the masculine, but in this day and age, it's everybody. If you just want to be out there in the workplace, whether you're raising a son or a daughter, there's a lot of things you have to be ready to do. There's a lot of choices you have to be ready to make. There's a lot of ways of thinking that male or female you have to be ready to do. And sometimes in pursuit of raising a son to be a good boy, to be a good man, we are not training him for the exact same things that both our boys and girls need to be prepared to do. 1 in 3 children are being raised without a father. 1 in 3. 1 in 3. And for this 1 in 3, that means teaching these boys, 1 in 3 boys, to be men falls largely on the mothers. It falls largely on mothers who, by and large, have a negative experience with men. And very commonly, a negative autopilot about what being a man means. And will either tend accidentally, without intent, unintentionally, to duplicate into their sons because they absorb this, or react against and do the opposite. So there was one relationship counselor, a colleague of mine. She had her stereotypes. She said, all men are ADD, all men are liars. Well, she had a son. And she was a single mom raising a son with this perspective, all men are liars. Well, guess what her boy did more of when he wanted to feel manly? He had absorbed this idea, all men are liars, so if I want to be a man, I have to be a liar. And all men are ADD, well then he absorbs this idea that, so if I'm going to be a man, I have to learn to not pay attention. So I have to not pay attention and I have to lie because that's what all men are. And if I'm not lying, if I'm not ADD, that means I'm not a man, Mom said. And Mom has been saying my entire life. And oddly enough, it surprised the mother when that's what her boy did. It surprised no one but the mother when the boy did that. And in fact, that son, at least for a season, was then brought to me. And because my definition of manliness is you take initiative, you learn to connect, and you're responsible. And so he learned, okay, I have to fulfill my responsibility, that's basic adulthood. I need to take initiative and balance with being inviting. So I need to get things done and balance with connecting. And that's what being a man is. So when he was with me, he's doing his homework, he's telling the truth, he's getting stuff done, he's focusing because, as part of initiative, you are in control, you make the choice. And so around me, he manifested my definition of masculinity, combined with the fact he had the personal example. But around his mother, who had the definition of masculinity is no attention and lying, guess what he kept doing around his mother? And so he had this kind of dichotomy, and then ultimately she moved out of state and took him with her. So he at least has 2 models now to choose from. So he can ultimately, as he gets older and he's making more rational choices, make that decision. Now when you're teaching a son to be a man and you're the woman, what do? Because he's not looking to you as the example, but he may be looking to you for an understanding of what men are like. Otherwise, the son will absorb his ideas of manhood from whatever he sees around him, mostly in the media. So if you want to see some of what he's going to see about manhood, take a look at the average video game. What do men do in the video games? Take a look at the average music video. What's the male-female dynamic in music videos? Take a look at the average television program he watches, the average movie he might go to. What's the male-female dynamic? And if that's what he's using to absorb his definition of manhood, what kind of man is he going to end up being? Listen to his music, the music that's popular with his age. Even if he doesn't own it, the music that's popular with his age that he's probably hearing when he's at his friend's house. The kind of shows that might be popular he might be watching when he's at a friend's house, when he's not with you, when you're not directly supervising him. What might he be absorbing from around him? Where will 1 in 3 learn manhood? It doesn't take much looking around to know that we can be in big trouble, society can be in big trouble if 1 in 3 boys grow up to be the kinds of men they just absorb from just music. They absorb from movies. They absorb from videos. That they absorb from what seems to work in the world around them, how they see boys acting, what men they see who seem to get the job done, what men they see who seem to get the girl. You know, all of these things, when he's looking at that, I want that outcome, what kind of men do that, to gravitate toward that, even though it's by and large a fantasy. That's not really the way it works, it's just the way it works on television, it's just the way it works in movies. Imagine the problem 1 generation from now if 1/3 of men just absorb their ideas of manhood from music, from media, from who they see getting ahead, from who they see getting the girl. And it's not necessarily who they see live and in person, but who they see in media, who they see in society around them. Imagine a great mother being a responsible parent. She's getting the job done, but there's an absent father. The boys might learn that women do all the work, and men just get to go do whatever they want to do with whomever they want. They don't even have to be around. It's okay. The woman will take care of all of the responsibilities. You know, we have a dynamic in a set of divorced parents. The mother is the only one trying to get the boys to do the homework. The dad doesn't do that. He does the work he has to do. She's as responsible as she can be. And what the kids end up learning is, well, responsibility is the purview of the woman. The man is only as responsible as circumstances force him to be. And that's pretty much all he does. He does what he has to because it has to be done, and if there's no woman to do it for him, then he'll have to take care of it. But women are the ones that are innately responsible, and that's what these boys are growing up watching. And then to make matters worse, it was the dad telling the kids, Mom's just crazy. You don't have to listen to her. And, you know, there were no consequences to negative behavior. Dad would always rescind any punishment, rescind any homework. And then, you know, even when they were divorced, they had this dynamic issue going on where only the mother is seeking the fulfillment of responsibilities. And the boys were growing up, even though they were doing most of what they were supposed to be doing, the responsibility was a female thing. And that part of the male experience is, you don't do anything you don't want to do. Nobody can tell you anything. That's what being a man is about. No one can tell me to do anything. I'll do what I have to do because you got to do what you got to do. But you don't got to do it. Do what you want to do. And if you don't mind paying the price for not doing the thing, don't worry about it. You don't mind getting an F in your class, you don't have to do your homework. You don't mind getting a C on stuff, just blow it off. Doesn't really matter. The price for that is a low grade. If you don't care about the low grade, I don't care about your homework. That's fine. And so a great mother doing a great job. What the boys were ending up learning, in this case in a mother-father dynamic, is that only women are responsible. That the men don't have to be responsible. Only women have to be responsible. And that the man only does what he's required to do. The woman is the one who takes care of all the rest of it. And the less he does, the more she does, you don't have to worry about it. Imagine unguided maleness with no clear idea of what being a man really means. And what a problem that can be. Because definitions drive autopilot. Now this gets to be a challenge, because imagine if you are that responsible woman. You are the responsible mother. You realize you're smart enough to know, okay, I've got issues with men. Your issues with men might be what your father did or didn't do, what he was or wasn't there for. Your issues with men might be what the father of the child was or wasn't there for, what your husband did or didn't do. And you're doing your best. And without a solid masculine model to keep sharing with and reinforcing with your sons, where are they going to get their ideas of what men are? They will develop their own definitions, what we call a holographic immersion definition. And it's an accumulation of their experience. To put it in the most simplistic and overly simplistic, I admit, terms, they will reference pictures and images that have emotional meaning to them. Say, this is what a man is. I saw that in this movie. I saw that in this movie. I saw this in this video game. I heard this in this whole line of music. And that's what it is. And now if the mother has a clean definition of this is what a man is, she can keep sharing that. And just like the woman who kept sharing, all men are liars, all men are ADD, she didn't realize she's also training her son to be, in that case, a liar and ADD. She kept telling him this. On the other hand, what if you have a definition, a clean definition of men are responsible, take initiative, and connect? Those are the three things, and that you are seeking to be powerful in this realm and selfless in the wielding of your power. Very simple, clean definition you can express in seconds. You don't even need a whole minute. And you can keep referencing that definition again and again and again. And as opportunity arises, keep unpacking that in much more detail for your son so he knows exactly what all of that means. So we can fix these things with these crystal clear ideas of what it means to be a man. MothersRaisingSons.com is addressing all this head on by coaching mothers in what your father couldn't teach you and your mother didn't know. What your father couldn't teach you and what your mother didn't know. And that's getting into this idea of clean definitions of masculinity. My father, when he said, Scott, you're not much of a man, he had an intuitive understanding that whatever man is, and I'm not sure what it is, whatever man is, there's what you are as my son, and what man is has some overlap with what you're doing, but the center of it is different, and I don't know what it is. This was part of his problem. He knew what I was doing wasn't right, but he didn't know what was right. He didn't know how to fix it. All he could tell me is, you're going to need to figure it out, and I can't help you. What my father couldn't teach me. I had to go figure out the vocabulary of it. Find out what it is and then develop the vocabulary to describe it. Go find it and be able to describe, be able to distill it down. And things that my mother didn't know. All she knew is how she felt. She had a lot of ideas, but as some of these ideas were kind of put into force, she realized, well, that's not quite it either. It's like, I don't really know. Now my father, because he was a man, he had this masculine experience, he had a stronger frame of reference, but he didn't know how to explain it. And my mother did her best for like the good boy going into good man, but she knew she was missing something. She goes, I really don't know what it is. So she doesn't have that personal experience from that feminine side, but she knew there's something that she's responding to and not responding to, and she just didn't quite know what it is. Well, I spent decades hunting down what it is. It took me about half a decade before parents were bringing their children to me for help with the kids and then help coaching the parents, boys in particular. And then over the course of time, we figured out the rest.